Well, lots of helpful advice around for David Cameron as he comes under more pressure from his own backbenchers. Liam Fox is calling on the government to change its economic strategy by freezing public spending. And then there's Sarah Wollaston. She wants the Prime Minister to rid his party of its posh white male image, promoting more women. She's with me now, along with fellow Conservative MPs Eleanor, Laing and Mark Reckless. Just want to ask you all a simple question, first of all. If you could wave a magic wand and Theresa May was the leader of the Tory party instead of David Cameron, would you be pleased?
But there isn't a vacancy at the top, and nor do I want there to be. I just think that the team around Cameron needs to look and sound more like modern Britain.
But if you could change from David Cameron, posh boy, to Theresa May, comprehensive school girl, that would surely achieve exactly what you want, wouldn't it?
No, it's not about that for me. I'm a Cameron loyalist.
Would you like to see a change?
No, I mean, we've got a in-out referendum the Prime Minister now wants. He's cut the EU budget, he's sorting out the deficit, and I think he's doing the right stuff for Britain. I'm keen for him to carry on.
No, Adam, we don't need a change of Prime Minister. We just need a change of emphasis on what we're doing. That's all.
Change of emphasis on what you're doing, but Prime Minister last week gave a speech. There is no alternative. He's carrying on as he was before. I mean, we've got the budget next week. Is there any room for change?
Well, yes, of course there is. For example, if the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were to decide on tax cuts that would put money in the pockets of the vast majority of people in the middle of our society all over the country, then that will give them money to spend right now. That would help the economy.
Yeah, but George Osborne said he's not going to do it. So
well, he hasn't exactly said that.
Well, he has.
No,
he said no unfunded tax cuts.
No, he's got unfunded.
What do you think?
Well, I'm not in favour of unfunded tax cuts myself, so there we are. Poor David Cameron's got this range of advice. What does he do? I'd say put some more investment into infrastructure projects, maybe like the Severn Barrow.
Well, for example, he's got advice from both sides, from Vince Cable, his coalition partner, and from Liam Fox, saying this idea of ring fencing, for example, guaranteeing the health service budget, come what may, that needs to go in times of austerity. What would we say to that?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. You'd probably not be surprised to hear that coming from a health service background as I do, because I think we have a huge challenge in how we're going to improve health and social care, particularly for a growing elderly population.
What about ring fences elsewhere, the aid budget, things like that?
Well, I think that there are arguments to be made about that. I mean, my personal view is that I'd agree with Cameron that actually you shouldn't cut aid to the world's most desperately poor.
Mark Reckless, ring fences, you need to keep them?
Well, we promised them, and I think one of the really important things about politics is keeping your promises. And everyone knows that we said, Cameron said at the last election, ring fence aid, ring fence the NHS. That's what he's promised. That's therefore what we should do.
But the problem is I mean, it wasn't exactly a promise, but it was a prediction that growth would be much higher than it is, that you would have achieved something like 7% growth by now in the Parliament. You've only achieved just over 2%. So you've got to do something different, haven't you?
Yeah, and the overseas aid spending is less because that promise was as a proportion of the economy you described. I mean, I think what we really need to focus on is the cost of living, which is I'm always hearing from my constituents. And we've held down council tax. We've frozen the tax element of petrol. As I said, we cut the EU budget. The other thing I'm really concerned about is energy costs, and I think we've done something on this, but we're under constant pressure from the Liberal Democrats for all these subsidies which push up the cost of energy. And I have a Kings North power station in my constituency. It's just been closed by an EU directive, but the Lib Dems are now trying to bring in a law that stops people building any new coal-fired power station. That's just going to push up the cost of energy.
But that is going to take decades to have an impact on unhappy constituents, people who are not voting for you.
It's the next few months that so many coal-fired power stations are due to shut down because of the EU directive. We either need to stop that happening or quickly get some more online to produce cheaper electricity.
You've got the CBI today, and they're saying they're not saying tax cuts. What they're saying is borrow some more and put some money into developing housing, for example, because that would stimulate growth.
But that puts up borrowing. We have to have policies which help builders to put money into developing housing and to get the building industry going, because then you've got a real kickstart to the economy.
But if it's not working, don't you need to change and come up with something new?
Yeah, I would always say that circumstances change, and therefore the Chancellor has to have flexibility. That's why ring fencing, nobody wants to see the health service budget cut. Absolutely not. We all want to see as much as possible spent on health. Right. But the Chancellor needs to have flexibility to change with changing circumstances.
Now, what about this change of image, this posh white boys. I mean, does that really matter?
No, it's not about that. It's about balance. It's about reflecting a balance. If we look at the proportion of women in the cabinet and we look at the proportion of people from ethnic minorities in the cabinet, it doesn't reflect modern Britain. And that's what my piece was about, saying how do we actually look and sound more like the people we represent? And I think that's very important.
I suppose the counter-argument would be, well, if women aren't as good as the men, they shouldn't be in the cabinet. The men should be there. Well,
no one is suggesting that, but I think if you look at the women that there are in politics today, there's some very talented women, plenty that he could choose from.
I mean, interesting point I read yesterday that of the 4 women in the cabinet, 3 of them don't have children.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I think this is an issue that I've also been talking about recently, about how we get women into politics at a younger age, because there's a decade for many women when they wouldn't wish to go into politics. How do we actually attract those women in? And I think job sharing is an idea we should pilot to get more women into politics at a younger age.
Morris, need more women, fewer men in the government?
Well, and I'm delighted you've allowed me on this this panel. But we have got good women coming through. I mean, look at Liz Truss and what we're doing on childcare. We had a female minister there before, but it was a Liberal Democrat who did very little on this issue. And what we're now doing is we're deregulating childcare to make it cheaper. But at the same time, we're bringing in support with childcare costs.
Need to be reshaped, if you like, made more feminine of the Tory press?
I mean, I think it is being reshaped. I mean, if you look at the 2010 e-take, if you look at people like Sarah, who was actually selected by an open primary, I think there is real talent bringing fresh air to the parliamentary party.
Come on, we've been tiptoeing around this issue for decades. Basically, there's only one person who can make a difference to putting women in places where they are seen and reflect the current Conservative Party, the country and the government, and that's the Prime Minister. So all these other things that many of us have been doing for ages and ages and trying to get more women in here and more women in there,
got to do more,
it doesn't matter. There's only one person who can grasp this and change the image of his government, and that's the Prime Minister.
He needs to stop talking about it and get on and do it.
OK, on that note, thank you very much indeed.